morning, dear learners. Welcome to teaching learning session of sociology. Today we'll start with BSOE 146, that is marriage, family and kinship. In today's topic, we'll discuss about marriage. We'll start with marriage. What is marriage? As we all know, marriage is a social institution. It is an important social institution and it is a relationship which has been approved by society or a socially approved relationship. When marriage is an institution and this relationship is approved by the society, the relationship is defined and sanctioned by the laws and the customs of the society. There are certain customs of the society, there are certain laws which uh, uh, control this institution, the institution of marriage. It has been defined by sociologists and anthropologists with reference to. Actually, there are three main points with reference to these points. Various sociologists and anthropologists try to define the institution of marriage. So, three important points are sexual union between a male and a female for procreation. So it has been defined on the basis of procreation. Second is establishment of the legitimacy of children born out of the union. Second is the legitimacy of the children. And third is acquisition of legal rights. So, on the basis of this, various anthropologists and sociologists defined the marriage. So, the definition of marriage is a relation of one or more male to one or more female, which is recognized by custom or laws and involve certain rights and duties, both in case of parties entering into the union and in case of the children born out of it. So, what is marriage? It is a relationship between one or more male and one or more female, right, which is recognized by the customs of the society, which is recognized by the law of the society, and it involves certain rights and the duties of both the parties entering into this union and in the case of the children born out of this union. According to the Malinovisky, it is a contract for the production and maintenance of children. Right? What is marriage? According to Malinovisky, it is a contract between male and a female for the production and the maintenance of children. Lindbergh defined marriage as it consists of the rules and regulations that defines the rights, duties, privileges of husband and wife with respect to each other. It is an institution. So there institution, what is institution? There are certain rights, there are certain rules, right? It is a rules, it is an institution which consists of a rules, regulations, and it has certain rights, duties, privileges of husband and wife with respect to each other. Horton and Hunt defined it as the approved social pattern whereby two or more persons establish a family. The significance of the institution of marriage in society is due to the different function it performs in the society, right? So, what are the three main functions of marriage? That is procreation. It is required for the legitimacy of the child, and it is required for the inheritance purposes. And this institution is very significant, is very important, right, in this society, and it performs different functions in this society. It provides a recognized form for entering into a relatively enduring heterosexual relationship for bearing and rearing of the children, right? So first important role which a marriage play is the procreation, right? It It is required for bearing and rearing of the children. Right? It is thus the primary way of regulating the human reproduction. It is required for the procreation, but it is the way to regulate the human reproduction. Right? It regulates the human reproduction because the legitimacy of the child depends on the inheritance of the properties and other things depends on the marriage. And marriage is what? Marriage is an institution sanctioned by the customs and laws of the society. So the first thing, the primary function of the marriage in this society is procreation, and it regulates the human reproduction. The rights of sexual relationships that universally accompanies marriage provide the legitimation of the children born in the wedlock, right? So this marriage actually legitimizes the children. The legitimacy of the great importance in matter of inheritance and succession, and this is required in the matters of succession and inheritance. In industrialized Western society, marriage function beyond the procreation and child rearing. It provides a companionship as well as emotional and the psychological support. Right? Although procreation and child rearing is an important primary function of the marriage, but apart from this, it provides a companionship as well as the emotional and the psychological support to each other. There are different theories of marriage, right? Edmund Leach defined marriage as a relationship establishment between a male and one or more other person, which provides that the children born to the women under circumstances not prohibited by the rules of relationship is accorded the full birth status right common to normal member of his or social strata. Right? He considered marriage as a bundle of rights allocated to either or both spouses. Right? The list of 10 rights performed by marriage, according to Edmund Leach, is to establish the legal father of a woman's children. Second, to establish the legal mother of the man's children, so it legitimizes the children. To give the husband a monopoly in wife's sexuality. To give the wife a monopoly in husband's sexuality. Fifth is to give a husband partial or monopolistic right to the wife's domestic and other labor services. Even this is important. Sixth is to give the wife partial or monopolistic right to husband's labor services. Next is to give the husband's partial or total right over the property belonging or potentially occurring to the wife. Next is to give the wife partial or total right over the property belonging or potentially occurring to the husband. To establish a joint fund of property, a partnership for the benefit of the children of the marriage. Next is to establish a socially significant relationship of affinity between husband and his wife's brothers. Kathleen Gogg, according to Kathleen Gogg questions the traditional definition of marriage in the terms of union between man and women for reproducing the legitimate offspring. Right? Kathleen Gogg questioned this definition of marriage. Traditional understanding of marriage assume the coexistence of three conditions, that is the sexual union between the male and the female, procreation of the offspring, and the legal legitimacy of the offspring born. Right? So these are the three things. Gogg argues that one of the above condition may or may not be present in the different forms of marriage. She illustrates this with the example of marriage among the Nayars of South Indians. Right. So, according to the traditional definition of marriage, what is required? That is the coexistence. There should be the coexistence of three conditions. That is the sexual union between the male and the female, then the procreation and the legitimacy. Gog said, if in many cases, if out of the three conditions one or more than one is not present, then she tried to explain it by giving the example of Nayars of South India. Right? So she questioned the traditional definition of marriage. Petrarca Abrai. Petrarca Abrai's study of Hindu marriage is an understanding of marriage in terms of law, litigation, and tradition. She discusses the importance of sex and sexuality in judicial perspective on marriage, both as a sacrament and as a contract. The dichotomy of sacrament and contract has been shown through Rakhama Bai case of 1884. So, Patricia O'Brien tried to explain the marriage in context of law, in context of litigation and tradition. In marriage could be a contract, right? In Muslims and Christians, it's a contract, but in Hindu, it is a sacred process. It is a dharma, right? So she tried to explain it in terms of law, litigation, tradition, right? She discusses the importance of sex and sexuality in judicial perspectives. Judicial perspectives on marriage, both as sacrament as well as a contract, right? There are certain marriage rules, right? And it is required to follow these rules. What are these rules? Rules of marriage: exclusion or inclusion of marriage partners. There are certain rules. These rules are known as rules of prohibition or rules of prescription. There are inclusion and exclusion of marriage partners. There are basically two type of rules about whom one should marry or one should not marry. There are well defined rules that whom one should marry and one should not marry, right? These rules are rules of prohibition or incest, taboo, or endogamy. You might have heard the term endogamy many times. This is rule of prohibition. A rule of prohibition states that a kin or a relative whom one cannot marry. Endogamy defines or states whom one cannot marry. That is prohibited as a marriage partner. Who all are prohibited as a marriage partner, right? This rule is found in North India, right? Rules of prescription and I'm sorry, it must be then exogamy, right? Rules of prescription, endogamy, prescribing the preferential marriage partners that are relatives who are preferred for marriages. What is rule of prohibition? Whom there are rules that states whom one cannot marry. It states who it states the kins or relative whom one cannot marry or that is prohibited as a marriage partner, while the rule of prescription states prescribe the preferential marriage partners that are the relative who are preferred for the marriages. Right, the practice of the cross cousins marriages among the South Indian is an example of rules of prescription. Then the there are the rules according to that is prohibition, then or the prescription, right? And then second is the rules on the basis of number of partners, right? First was on the exclusion and inclusions of partner, and second was on the number of partners. In some society, people are allowed to have only one marriage partner, that is monogamy is allowed, whereas in many other society, they are allowed to have more than one marriage partners. Then on the there are third rule is on the basis of status of group in which preferably girls are married, right? It could be the higher status group. If a girl married to a higher status group, then that is known as hypergamy. If a girls get married to a lower status group, hypogamy, or equal status group, that is the isogamy, status of group in which preferably girls are married. So there are three rules basically on the basis of the inclusions of the partner or exclusion of the partner, then the number of the partner, and the status of group in which preferably girls are married, right? Okay. Incest taboo, that is on the basis one of the basic and universal rule of in exclusion of marriage is insectable. Now that is the rule of prohibition, right? This is rule of prohibition, that is the prohibition of marriage or a sexual union between the members of the primary family. In society with unilineal descent system, that is unilineal descent system is that is either you follow the patrilineal system or a matrilineal system, that is the unilineal descent system. The incest taboo is often defined based on the distinction between the two kinds of the cousins, the first cousins and the parallel two kinds of the first cousins, that is the parallel cousin and the cross cousins, and the sexual relationship with the parallel cousin is prohibited because they belong to the same generation and the same descent group, while the sexual relationship with the cross cousin is not a taboo because they belong to the opposite group or a moiety, right? Exogamy and endogamy. Exogamy is a marriage rule that prohibits the marriage within one's own defined social group. What is exogamy or rule of prohibition? Right? With whom you cannot marry. It defines with whom one cannot marry, one cannot be chosen as a marriage partner. That is the rule of exogamy. Exogamy is the marriage rule that prohibits the marriage within one's own defined social group, right? Like in North India, one cannot marry within the same gotra, or the marriage between the parallel cousin is prohibited, right? So exogamy is the marriage rule that prohibits marriage within one's own defined social group. The avoidance of incest and the widening of social network are the factor that prevents people from marrying within the group. Endogamy, what is endogamy? Endogamy is that endogamy which prescribes or which de- defines whom to prefer as a marriage partner, right? Right? Endogamy allows a marriage with members of a close kin groups, right? Like in South India, there could be a marriage between the cross. There could be a cross cousin marriage, right? The reason for this is that the spouse would come from a specific group. It ensured the maintenance of a strong kinship network within the group, right? So exogamy is what? Exogamy is a rule of prohibition which states with whom one cannot marry, and endogamy is rule of prescription. It defines one whom one should prefer as a marriage partner, right? Then monogamy and polygamy, that is on the basis of number of partner one can have, right? Right? So the monogamy and polygamy. Monogamy is a marriage in which both partners can have just one spouse. Single male can marry a single female. One man can marry one female. That is a monogamy. That is both partner can have only one spouse. It is most common form of marriage and primarily for the economic reasons, right? And polygamy is what? When one individual having multiple spouses at the same time. That is known as polygamy. When one partner can have more than one spouses, right? Then that is known as polygamy. There are two forms of polygamy: polygamy and polyandry. Then again, polygamy, when both can have, male and female can have more than one partners, right? So polygamy is further divided into two: polygyny and polyandry. Polygyny is what? When a marriage of a man to two or more women at the same time, then that is polygyny. And polyandry is a marriage of a woman to two or more than two men at the same time. That is known as polyandry. That is when one man marries more than one girl at the same time, then that is known as polygyny. And when female or a woman marries more than one male at the same time, or can have more than one spouse at the same time, that is known as polyandry. Monogamy is that both male and female can have one spouse. Polygamy is what? That they can have more than one spouses. Then polygamy is further divided into polygyny and polyandry. Polygyny is what? Polygyny is when one male can have more than can marry more than uh, one women at the same time, right? Then that is known as polygyny. And polyandry is when a woman can have two or more than two spouses at the same time, then that is known as polyandry. Mono means one, monogamy one spouse. Poly states many, polygamy more than one spouse. Guinea represents a women. Polygyny two or more wives. Polyandry means men, and polyandry means two or more husbands, right? Marriage rules is exogamy, marriage out. Exo means exit, gamy means marriage, right? That prohibits the people of the same social group from marrying. That is that is exogamy. Exo means exit. Endogamy, marrying in. Exo is marrying out. Exo is out, right? Exit. And endo is in, marrying in. Endo means in and exo means exit. So exo is that is it prohibits the people. It prohibits the people to marry within the same group. What endogamy is what? That is marriage within the group. That is marriages must preferential marriages are endogamy, right? Marriage and rules of residence. See, we discussed about marriage. We are discussing the marriage rules. We discussed the endogamy, exogamy, right? We discussed the rules on the basis of number of spouses one can have, and now there are the rules of residence, right? That is in patrilocal type, right? Where patrilocal, the residence is groom's father. What is I explain it. Patrilocal, that is when one resides with the when a wedded couple resides with the groom's father. It is patrilocal when one resides with the groom's father. Matrilocal, when one resides with the bride's mother. Matrilocal, right? Virilocal, husband's house, when the bride moves to the husband house. Zuriolocal, when they move to the wife's house. Avunical local, that is the when couple moves to the mother's brother's place. And neolocal, when couples own their own residence. Patrilocal residence occurs when a newly married couple establishes their home near or in the groom's father's house. Actually, in the groom's father's house is patrilocal. When they develop or establishes their home in the groom's father's house, it is patrilocal. right? This makes sense in this society that follows the patrilineal lineage. That is when the descent is traced from male sides, right? This is because it allows the groom to remain near his male relatives. Women do not remain in their natal household after marriage with their residence pattern, right? So patrilocal is when a newly married couple moves to the groom's father's house, and in patrilineal society basically follows this patrilocal residential system. Matrilocal residence occurs when a newly married couple establishes their home in the bride's mother's house, right? And it keeps the women near their female relatives. And this residence pattern is associated with matrilineal system. Men leaves their natal household when they marry. In this, the men or the groom moves to the bride's place, bride's mother's place. Right. Next is very local type of a residence. A very local is the residence pattern in which a woman moves into her husband's home, right? And zero local is the residence pattern in which a man moves to the wife's home. Evenical local, in this residence, when a newly married couple establishes their home near or in groom's maternal uncle's house. When a newly married couple moves near or in the groom's maternal uncle's house. Groom's maternal uncle's house. This is associated with matrilineal system. It occurs when men obtain status, jobs, and from the nearest elder matrilineal male relatives. Having a woman's son live near her brother allows the older man to more easily teach his nephew what he needs to know in order to assume his matrilineal inherited role. Neolocal residence occur when the newly married couple establishes their independent home. That is when they establish a home that is independent of both set of relatives, neither from groom side, neither from the bride sides. They establishes their home, their new home, their independent home, right? It has become popular and common in contemporary society because it suits the cultural emphasis on the independence. Next is ambilocal. Ambilocal residence occurs when a newly married couple has the choice of living with or near the groom's or the bride's family. The couple may also live for a while with one set of a parent and then move to live with other set of a parent. That is ambilocal. Ambilocal is when for the some time they have a choice whether they want to live with the bride's family or the groom side of a family, or they can move from one side to another side on the basis of their preferences, right? Now, marriage presents or economic transactions. This economic transactions plays an important role in marriage, and this economic transaction is termed as dowry. Dowry is form of marriage presents in which there is a transfer of material wealth in form of jewelry, clothes, furniture from the family of bride to the groom and his family. When the bride's family gives the gifts or the presents in form of the jewelry, clothes, furniture, cash to the groom and his family, it is neither to be understood as a form of bride's wealth because she has no control over it, and the material or money is used by her husband and his family. Bride, next is economic transaction is there. One term is dowry. These are the presents in form of jewelry, clothes, or furniture given by the bride's family to the groom's family, and bride has no control over this, and it has been used by the groom's family. Next is bride's price. What is bride's price? A bride price, referred to as bride wealth, is in form of marriage payment in which the bride's group receives a payment of goods, money, or livestock to compensate for the loss of women's labor and the children she bears. Bride's price, that is, the groom pays the price of a bride to the bride's family. Why the groom pays the price of a bride to the bride's family? This is a compensation of what? This is a compensation of the goods, money, or the livestock, or the this is the compensation of what? This is the compensation of loss of labor, because they are giving their family member or their daughter to someone else, and they consider it as a loss of a labor. So to compensate the loss of the labor as well as the children she bears, that is a loss. So the groom's family pays to the bride's family to compensate this loss. These exchange relations between the families may persist over many years, and in some society constitutes the chief means for the circulation of wealth. In these situations, marriage is a corporate enterprise in which control over prestige valuable is exercised by the older generation of men. They are paying the bride's price, but again this has been controlled by the older generation males, and this is a basic mean or the chief means for the circulation of wealth. Marriage payments are thus way of establishing and securing alliance and for allocating women's labor power and fertility. Bride price is not a payment for women, but rather is seen as a way of valuing a labor of a woman. That effort involved by the bride's family in raising the female and labor values of a woman's offspring. Next is bride's service. First was dowry. Transaction, economic transactions involves, first was dowry, then the bride's pay. Dowry was when the bride's family pays to the groom's family, that was the dowry. Second was the bride's pay, that is bride payment was, bride's price was when the groom's family pays to the bride's price. Right now, what is bride's service? Bride service is the custom in which groom or the husband is expected to render services for a stipulated period for the family of his wife. That is bride service. When a groom serves the family of the bride for a certain period of a time, then that is known as bride service. Right? So what is bride service? Bride service is the custom in which the groom or the husband is expected to serve the bride's family for a stipulated time period. This custom is more common among the agricultural society, and therefore it includes working in the field that belongs to the wife's father. Right? Example is Yanomami, the husband, that is the Yanomami tribe, the husband assists his father-in-law. Right? So example of this bride service is the Yanomami tribe. Right? So I hope marriage is clear. Why marriage is required? What is marriage? Marriage is an institution, social institution, which is recognized by the customs and the laws of the society. Why marriage is required? Why this is marriage? Why this is required. This is for the regulation of the sexual activities and to for procreations, right? For the legitimacy of the child, which is required for the inheritance, right? And successions. Apart from these, this provides a companionship as well as emotional support as well as psychological support. Right? There are certain rules. We discussed about the certain rules of marriage. What are the certain rules of marriage? On the basis of preferences or prohibition of marriage partner, choosing a marriage partner. We discussed about exogamy. Exogamy is what which prohibits that whom one should not marry. The next is endogamy, that it is also known as the preferences. It states whom one should prefer as a marriage partner. Then there are rules on the basis of the number of partners one can have. Monogamy, which is the most prevalent form in many society, in majority of societies, in fact, monogamy is that is one partner can have one spouse, one male can have one male can have one wife, and one wife can have one husband only. That is monogamy. Second is polygamy, is when one can have more than one spouses or a partner, right? Then that is polygamy. Polygamy is further divided into polygyny and polyandry. Polygyny is when one male can have more than one wife, or can have two or more than two wives. That is polygyny. Polyandry is when one female can have two or more than two husbands. That is polyandry, right? So this is on the basis of number of spouses. Then there are certain rules on the of residence, right? That is whether that is the patrilocal, matrilocal. Patrilocal is when a newly wedded couple resides with groom's father's house, right? That is patrilocal, and it is most prevalent type in patrilineal society. Matrilocal is when newly wedded couple resides in bride's mother's house. That is matrilineal, prevalent in matrilineal society. Then virilocal is when the wife moves to the husband's place. Zero local, when husband moves to the wife's house. Then neo-local, when they establishes a new independent house. That is neo-local, right? Then some economic transactions are involved in marriage, right? These transactions are termed as the dowry. What is dowry? Dowry is the payments which has been made by the bride's family to the groom's family. Then next is the bride payment, right? Bride's price. In fact, bride price is what the price that the groom's family or the groom pays the price of the women's labor to the husband, to bride's family, right? This price is considered as a compensation to the women labor as well as the child which she will bear, right? Next transaction is known as the bride services. Bride services is in this is a custom where the groom is supposed to help the bride's family for a certain stipulated period of time. This is known as the bride service, and it is quite common in tribe, Mami, right? Now family. We'll discuss about family. What is family? We discussed about marriage. Family. The term family comes from the Latin word famula. Familia means household. Familus, familia, meaning household. It is the most efficient example of primary group. We discussed about the group. There are two types of the group, the primary group and the secondary group. Family is the example of primary group, right? The family is a group and an institution as it has central rules and procedure at its base. See, don't confuse whether family is a group or an institution. Family is both. It is a group as well as an institution. Family is a primary group and family is an institution because there are certain rules, there are certain procedure at its base, right? In institutions there are certain rules, there are certain procedures, right? In family there are certain rules, there are certain procedures. Anthropologists study families with reference to different dimensions, including co-residence rules, pattern of authority, descent, marriage, property, and kinship term. Anthropologists studied family in different dimensions. They studied family in terms of kinship, right? The dimension includes the co-residence rule, right? Whether they reside together, whether the members of a family resides together. Pattern of authority. What is the pattern of authority? Descent group, right? Then on the basis of marriage, on the basis of property and kinship terms, anthropologists study family with reference to the various dimensions. It is considered as the most basic and fundamental unit in this society and therefore universal grouping in human society. Family is universal concept. We find the concept of family in each and every society in the world. It's a universal, right? So it is considered as the most basic and the fundamental unit. It is the bond of kinship which primarily unites the member of the familial grouping together. Right? It is the bond of kinship. It unites the member of the familial groups together. The two fundamental principles of integration that serve as binding force to keep family intact are based on the connection arising through the marriage and the descent. There we can divide the family, we can discuss the family on the basis of two, that is the family on the basis of the marriage or family on the basis of the descent group. These principles operates to produce three major kinds of relationships are those existing between the husband and wife, parents and children, and the sibling. So there are the two basic principles, fundamental principles of integrations, right? That serve as a binding force to keep the family together. That is either a connection, that connection arises through the marriage or the connection that arises through the descent, right? So these principles operate the three major kind of relationship, that is between the relationship between the husband and wife, between the parents and the children, and between the siblings. Family. George Murdoch defined the family as a social group characterized by the common residence, economic cooperation, and reproduction. It includes adults of both sexes, at least two of whom maintain a socially approved sexual relations, and one or more children owned or adopted of sexually cohabited adults. Right? Murdoch defined family as a group. There are certain characteristics of group according to Murdoch. That is, it is a group characterized by the common residence. They should reside together. They should cooperate economically. There should be economic cooperation and reproduction. It includes the adults of both sexes. At least two of them should maintain a socially approved sexual relationship and should have one or more children owned or adopted by sexually cohabited adults. Then this is family. Others define family as a group of people who are united by the ties of marriage or ancestry or adoption, and who are reorganized by the community as constituting a single household and having a responsibility of rearing children. Right? So others define the family as a group of a people. They are united either by the ties of the marriage or through ancestry or the adoption, or who are organized by the community as a constituting a single household. They have a single household and having a responsibility of a rearing a children. The USA Census defined the family as two or more persons who are related to each other by blood or marriage or through adoption and who live together. So, according to this definition, two or more persons who are related to each other either through blood, either through marriage, or either through adoption, and they live together. Family is a social group characterized by the common residence. Most important thing is common residence. There should be economic cooperation and reproduction. However, it is important to differentiate family from other similar social group like kin, household, and the domestic group. Right? So, there are the terms, that is the family, other term is kin, household, or the domestic group. What is the difference between the family and a kin? We know family. What is the family? Family is when two or more people live together, when they are associated with each other either through marriage or the through descent or through adoption. Then that is, and they should help each other economically. Then that is known as a family, right? In common parlance, the term family and the kin appears to be the same, but in anthropological literature they are different. The family denotes a relationship between the spouses and their children who are described as a siblings, right? The kin includes within the bound a large number of persons. What creates a kinship will necessarily depends upon the social organization in context to which the term is applied. So, what is a family? Actually, family is that is the family denotes a relationship between the spouse and their children. That is the family, and the kin is a large. It includes a large number of a person, and that depends on the social structure, right? It depends on the social organization and the social structure in which this term is applied. Difference between family and a household. Family and household are often used interchangeably, but not the same thing. Family is group of two or more people who are related by birth, marriage, or adoption and residing together. All such people are considered to as a member of a one family. That is, they are related either through birth, that is siblings, or through marriage or through adoption, and they reside together. Whereas household, a single economic unit, all the member of mutually dependent on one another for production of their food supply and satisfaction of most of their wants, right? See, what is the household is again a single economic unit where all members of which are mutually dependent on one another for the production of their food supply, satisfaction of most of their wants. Households consist of a family or a part of a family or a part of a core member. There may be household member who are not member of a family, such as a servant. While the family membership is termed the share of consumption, production, and ties of intimacy often extends over the households. Households is that the people might be residing together. They might be dependent on each other for their services, right? But it is not necessary that they might be a member of a same family. Example is servant. They might be living in the same house, might be dependent, you might be dependent on the service, and servant is dependent on you, right? There are mutual dependence, but that servant is not a member of a family. This is known as household. Domestic group is defined as a group, a human being who habitually shares a common dwelling and a common food supply. A family can be a domestic group, but there are some differences between the family and the domestic group. The domestic group may consist of one or more nuclear families, as well as people without kinship link includes the servant and other members who work and share as the same production space. At the same time, members of one family may be distributed over two or more domestic groups. As a concept, domestic group is wider than a family and often used synonymously with household. So, household, the domestic group, all these are the synonyms and synonymously used. Characteristics of a family. There are certain characteristics of a family. The first characteristic and important characteristic is universality. Family is a universal concept. It's a universal institution. It is found in all societies, from simple to advanced societies. The whole social structure is built of family unit. So it's a universal concept. Next is permanent relationship between husband and wife. The family is constituted of husband, wife, and their children. Thus, a permanent relationship of some kind is established between men, women, and the main characteristic of their traditional family. A person living alone in the housing unit or a group of unrelated people sharing a housing unit, such as partner or one who occupies a room, are also counted as household. Right? Next is sexual relations as a basis of family. Right? The first characteristic is universality. It is a universal concept. It is a universal institution. There is a permanent relationship between the members of the family, right? No one can replaces the family member. Next is sexual relationship as a basis of a family. Marriage of a man and a woman was institutionalized for the legitimacy of sexual relations, for procreations of the offspring, and this leads to the formation of elementary form of basic unit of society. Right? Then significance of blood relation. In the traditional family, blood was a substance of utmost importance. All those connected through the same blood were regarded as the member of the same family. Financial and economic sharing of the responsibilities. In traditional families, the financial and the economic responsibility shared among the members of the family. Then common habitation is another characteristic. It is assumed that the all members of the society share a common habitat. They share a common habitation. That is, they stay together in one residence. The common habitation help the members in sharing common responsibilities or the economic responsibilities. System of interaction and communication. The family is composed of persons who interact and communicate with each other in their social rules. So there is a system of interaction and communication, right? The family is composed of a person, and they interact and communicate with each other in social roles. Now there are certain functions of families. What are the functions of families? First function is the satisfaction of sexual needs. This is the essential function which the family performs. Reproduction is the second function. The task of race, perpetuations or procreation has always been an important function of a family. Then organizing production and consumption, organizing production and consumption. In pre-industrial society, the economic system is dependent on each family's production. Much as what is consumed, the family has been a traditional means of securing the member with their consumption needs. So they are, in short, they are economically dependent on each other. Next function is socialization of children. It is one of the most important function of the family, that is socialization of the children. The family is responsible not only for the reproducing, but also for ensuring that its children are encouraged to accept the lifestyle it favors, to master the skills it values, and perform the work required. So it is the responsibility of the family to socialize the child, right? To inculcate those skills in the child, which values, right? To encourage this child to accept the lifestyle which is suitable, right? And to master the child to perform the work required. Next important function is property transformation, inheritance, successions. The family act as an agency of holding and transmission of property. Most families accumulate much property such as land, goods, money, jewelry, and other form of wealth. The family transmits the property from one generation to another generation. Types of the family. There are certain types of the families, that is the traditional family and the modern family. A traditional family consists of a male, female, and one or more of their biological or adopted children. Most traditional families are extended, including the grandparents, uncle, aunts, parents, children. The modern family is nuclear family and small in size and consists of a mother, father, and one or more children. That is the nuclear family. Traditional family includes the male, that is mother, father, children, and grandparents, uncle, aunts, parents, and the children, right? And modern family is a nuclear family. It is smaller in size. It just includes mother, father, and their unmarried children, basically. The typical size of traditional family has more than two generations living together, right? When what is the traditional family? The typical size of traditional families where two generations are living together. The modern family generally has 3 to 4 people. In traditional family, the man is always a breadwinner while woman is a housewife. The man is very patriarchal and makes the decision himself. While in joint family or nuclear family, it is not like that. Biological family, nuclear, joint, or the extended family. Nuclear family is a unit composed of a husband, wife, and their unmarried children. The size of nuclear family is very small, 3 to 4. It is free from control of elders. It is regarded as the most dominant and the ideal form of form of family in modern society. Extended family is what? The extended family is used to indicate the combination of two or more nuclear families based on an extension of parent-children relationship. According to Murdoch, an extended family consists of two or more nuclear families affiliate through the extension of parent-child relationship. That is the parent and their married children. That is when where the two generation live together. That is say mother, father, and their married son. This is considered as an extended family. Joint family consists of set of siblings, their spouses, and their dependent children. According to M.S. Gore, a joint family consists of man, his wife, their adult sons, Their wives, children, and the younger children are the paternal couple. We will discuss it later on in our next lecture. That's all for today. Thank you very much. Namaskar.